what is the biggest difference? Not just between you and maybe a competitor, but just consulting, right? Like what you guys do from a consulting standpoint and kind of what everybody else does is from a consulting standpoint. Where do you think if there's a couple things that really separate that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and one that I do get asked often, because um, our target market, our ideal customer avatar, a buyer persona, or whatever you want to call it, the people that we choose to work with are group practices first and foremost. So we really don't work with too many solo practices unless those practices desire to be, go from one location to 10, right? But just your 50% of the market, traditional solo practice, usually a single dentist, and that's not our core market. Ours are group practices that are doctor founded and debt funded. So they are all pre-private equity. These are the dentists that are usually the founders of the initial practice, and they are all too often still working clinically, and they're in some phase of transitioning out of a clinical role and into a leadership role, CEO, visionary, whatever, that leadership role, right? And I think many of them have worked with dental practice management consultants in the past.
Yep.
And there are a lot of dental practice management consultants, some of them that do things slightly differently or have a niche focus or something like that. But most of those dental practice management consultants are what I would categorize as operational consultants. They are people who come in and help you to schedule more efficiently, and they work on some aspects of culture, and they talk about case presentation and acceptance, and hygiene efficiencies and recall retention and all this type of stuff at an operational level, which is super important. And we really don't do any of that. So the first thing that, when people say, well, you're a consultant, I've already worked with a consultant, I don't need consulting help, they may have already worked with a consultant and either had success or failure with that. We're business strategists. We work with the C-suite. We work with the leadership team. It's usually the founder or founding partners of the business. And we work with them on growth strategy. So they come to us and they say, Perrin, I've got 3 locations. One's my first location, which is the castle. It's perfect. It's a flagship office. The other 2 were acquisitions, and they didn't go quite as well. So we need to fix some of that. And then my vision is I want to take this from 3 locations to 15 locations in 5 years. And and my desire is that I want to sell the business. I want to be out, and I want to put, after all debts paid off, taxes, transaction expenses, and all that, I want to put $10 million in my bank account. How do I do that? And so we build a financial model of their business that has the debt structure piece, because, like I said, all of our clients are using bank funds to grow. And if the bank doesn't continue to lend to them, your growth strategy doesn't mean anything at that point, because you don't have a funding mechanism.
100%,
so,
yeah.
We want to look at the debt piece of it first. We want to look at a lot of operational parameters and aspects of the business that we think are important in terms of like utilization rates and things like that. We want to look at certainly the cost structure of each of the locations. So hopefully those 3 locations in this example would be set up on individual P&Ls. So we would have line of sight reporting into the cost structure of each of those businesses. We want to benchmark the expenses to figure out, are they above standard or below? And what's the trend line over the last couple of years? Meaning, is the number getting better or is it getting worse?
And a lot of people don't look at that, or they don't have the context around that. Is that right?
Well, they don't. And the challenge is that most of them are using something like QuickBooks, which is great. I mean, it works really well. Or their accountant is, maybe taking their QuickBooks and putting it into a little bit better financial statement, but their accountant may not be dental specific. So what you end up with is a profit and loss statement that has every expense line as a percentage of revenue. And that's okay, but if it doesn't give you any benchmark to compare against, how do you know if you're doing well or not?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a number on a sheet of paper, but it doesn't give you any actionable intelligence in terms of really how to manage to the number. And then the comparable piece is to prior period. So if you so I grew up in Patterson Dental Company and was a general manager for 15 years. And if there was one thing that they drilled into us, it was P&L management, and we
Yep.
were responsible for all of it. So let's take dental supplies, because that's everybody's favorite expense category. And if I tell you that you're running, a group, for example, that's generating $10 million in revenue, and you're spending $600,000 on dental supplies, well, the QuickBooks would tell you that's 6% of revenue. Okay, fine. But if I tell you now the benchmark or the standard or the number you need to be aiming for is 5%, now there's a meaning to the number. You're at 6%, you should be at 5. Okay, so that gives me a target to shoot at, to try to drill down waste, to minimize the amount of extraneous supplies that are on the shelves, or misordering or overordering, or something like that. But if I say, well, Gary, you should be at 5 and you're at 6 right now. Where were you last year? Well, last year you were at 7. So you're actually making
So
progress.
you're
The trend
trending.
line is, yeah,
Yeah.
a trend line's going in the right direction. So if you have a P&L that's set up with just percentage of revenue, it doesn't give you anything actionable. It's
Mm.
called line of sight reporting and managing by exception. So now that I say you're not at standard, but your trend line's going in the right direction, let's figure out what we need to do to gain that other point. So these are sort of the thought processes behind a lot of this. When we start working with clients, we really drill into the numbers, because we're trying to generate what's known as operating leverage. And operating leverage is simply growing the bottom line faster than the top line.